Hi there, my Wonderlings, and welcome back for another very special episode of Welcome to Wonderland. We've had the honor and privilege of speaking with some amazing guests recently, and this week is no different. Join me as we dive into a rabbit hole filled with a world of total fantasy and learn just how a world like that is created.
I wonder.
I wonder.
I wonder.
I wonder.
I wonder.
I read a lot of fiction, and I'm no stranger to a fun fantasy novel. But until today, I've never had the opportunity to speak to a creator of fantasy worlds. And I'm excited to introduce our guest for today, Miss Winnie Tataw.
Hello. Well, I'm happy to be here.
So, Winnie is a very accomplished young woman. She is the author of the Scion series. She's an artist, a blogger, a media personality with her new TV show, Wynn's Literary Lounge, and founder and owner of independent publishing company, Wynn's Books. Did I get all that right? Is that everything? Because it's a lot.
Yes. Yes. And a partridge and a pear tree. And then.
Oh my goodness. So tell me a little bit, or tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
So I have always been a lover of art and literature since I was a little Winnie, and it's always followed me around. And I got into college and just continued pursuing those dreams. And that dream became more of an obsession. And then that obsession became a business where now I get to travel all around the nation, writing and talking to other authors and meeting readers and just exploring art and expanding my love and lore of fantasy and writing with others.
That is incredibly exciting. And you have so much to offer. And I'm sure that we're going to be able to speak again. Today, though, we're going to kind of talk about that art of storytelling and what it's like to create that entire world. So, the Child of Tempest, which is the first book in your Scion.
Yes.
There are 5? There are 4 and a fifth coming?
And then, yes, there's 5 now, and then one more, and then hopefully I'm done with the series. I've been telling everyone it's going to end at 6, and I also telling myself it's going to end at 6. But I also told myself this was going to be a duology, so.
Well, I read the first one, and I'll have to pick up the next one. I actually got this one at Soda City Comic Con, so I've got an autographed copy here. It's got my name in it and everything. But I went downstairs just for a minute. We were upstairs working with all the celebrities and all of that. And I went downstairs just for a minute, and I went to your table, and I was like, what is this book about? And you're like, it's fantasy and time traveling. I was like, I'm going to try it. So I picked it up, and I really enjoyed it. And when you think about books, so I've got some information here. So literally people have been publishing stories for eons. So back in Mesopotamia in the 3rd millennium BC, they had clay tablets with stories on them. Papyrus in ancient Egypt. In China in the 2nd century BC, books were written on bone, on shells, on bamboo. The oldest printed book is considered to be the Diamond Sutra, which is 868 AD. So we're going to get into more of that. Books were made on wax, on parchment. We eventually got the printing press in the 1400s. Mass market books, ebooks, like it just kept continuing. And literally for centuries and eons, people have been telling stories. And somehow you made an entirely different story that no one has told in hundreds and thousands of years. And then you continue to build on that. And so I'm really excited today to kind of talk about what that process is, how you come up with an entirely new world, an entirely new idea, an entirely new concept, when literally people have been doing this since the beginning of time. It's not a new field. It's not a new concept, but what you write is new. And so that's kind of where I'd like to take this today. And I'm going to start with I got some questions from people on Facebook, and one of our listeners is Leroy from Columbia, South Carolina. And his question was, where do you get your inspiration for the world building? Like, how does that start there?
So for me, along with being a lover of reading, I've always been a lover of mythology and culture. My mother was in the military, so we moved a lot. So I got to be exposed to a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people, a lot of different places. And with that, I got to learn and read upon culture. So we had lived in Germany for about 3 years. My parents are also from Cameroon, Africa. So just being able to travel there too and, be with family and learn about the culture, learn about the art and the traditions and experiences of all these different types of people and indigenous people really helped me curate stories and world building. One thing about world building, it's usually always coming from a reference point. So for me, my reference point was my family, so Cameroon and Africa, and then also my childhood and growing up. So, living in Germany, living in Europe, living here in the southern part of the United States, which is filled with so much lore and history and culture, both good and bad. So getting to both experience that and read about it and actually be immersed in those cultures was what propelled my outlook on world building and how I was able to create these different worlds and make them so fun and imaginative because I think of it as, you have a big collage that you're just taking from just wherever, whether it be from your own experiences, from experiences other people have had. So you're just taking that with world building, just taking those little pieces from other cultures, both your own and outside sometimes, to create a new picture out of them.
So, how much of your personal life do you think is reflected in your work? So, in this one, you've got some family trauma, I would say. And I met your folks at the table. They came by and picked up a card. But so there's obviously some things that are not from your personal life, but how much of your personal life is reflected in something like this?
Yes, I think it's not as much as my personal life, I would say. From one, both my parents have been in my life and have been very kind and loving.
No demon kings.
So there are no connections there. And my mom is my best friend, so definitely no connections with Queen Reva and her children. But I think for every author, we do kind of write a bit of your life or yourself into your book, some more than others. I think for me, I didn't write too much of my own life into it, but it's always fun when family or friends are like, "Hey, this character seems like me. Like, is this based off me?" I'm like, "No," but I'm happy that
But
you
maybe a little,
maybe a little, but
maybe some little personality traits, little quirks.
yes, definitely. So it's always fun when that happens, but at least for me, I don't try to write too much of my family or my own experience in that on my books because I feel then I'm no longer writing a fantasy series. I'm writing historical fiction or a a
Sure.
retelling of my life, which I'm not trying to do. But yeah, and every writer, we always add a little bit of ourselves in there, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. But again, I don't. I think maybe say like 10% of my stories kind of have some part of Winnie snuck in there somewhere.
So, how does the whole process start? Like, do you start with an idea of a plot point or an idea of a character who you want things to happen to? Like, where does the birth of that happen?
So it's kind of funny because it kind of just depends on the story. At least for the God Scion, it started off of I was watching. My mom had just had a surgery, so I'm a big cartoon buff. So I was watching. I think it was like Wings Club or something, and it was some animated show. And I was like, what if the couple had a baby? And that baby was, I just kind of ran with it. And I did like, okay, then, well, the baby can't be alone. They got to grow up. And like, well, when they grow up, they got to have a boyfriend or girlfriend. And then they got to have a family too. And that family's got to have like, so that's kind of where it built out. For me, my books are very character driven. So it always starts with the characters. And then I add in what is their overarching plot and issues, but I definitely always say I think I start with characters for all of my stories. The ones written and haven't been written, it always comes up from, oh, what if like this happened, and what if I put these two things or ideas together.
So when you have these characters, and so you've got this, this child that you've kind of birthed in your head, you're like, okay, he's going to grow up and he's going to do these things. Is it a quick process, or is it like you've got a post-it note over here with, okay, this is this character and these are some of his character traits I want him to have, and then you kind of start developing? Is it slow, or is it just, I see this person and this is who they are, and then the story develops around it?
Yeah, I definitely think my mind kind of runs wild with character creation. But then when it comes to plot, that's when I'm like, okay, time to sit down and write and, have the post-it notes. I'm kind of like that meme where the guy where he has all the post-it notes, he's like, there's a connection here. Like that's me trying to fit all these characters into one cohesive plot. But yeah, it's just like I'm just like a ping-ponging with myself. I'm like, okay, this character looks like this. Okay, well, they have a sister. Oh, and this sister has a boyfriend, and this boyfriend has a brother, and this brother has his own boyfriend. And I just keep going until I'm like, okay, I think I'm good now. And then I'm like, okay, what do I do with all these characters? Now it's time to actually put them into a setting and a plot, which is where it's now like, okay, yeah, it's been 4 months. Now we have something. Now we have a full-fledged outline with characters that have names. That's just not character with red hair or character with one eye missing.
So let's talk about names. I actually did have Cheyenne from Irmo, South Carolina, had a question about, so she reads a lot of fantasy. I work with Cheyenne, and she reads a lot of fantasy, and she wanted to know, how do authors come up with the names for their characters, especially in a fantasy world where they tend to be a little more, it's not, Ashley and Timothy and James.
We always, of course, we want to be different and unique, but there's also playing into themes. So for me, my characters, at least for Roderick's family, I have a joke that his parents, they're both named R, so his mother was just lazy. It's just like, we're just going to name all of them R's because we're both R's. And we, of course, want to confuse everybody. That's the whole point of this. I'm not trying to make this like learn their names. I don't know what you want me to do. But
R1, R2, R3, and R4.
Exactly what she did. She was like, I don't have time to be creative. They're all going to R, and we'll call it a day. But for other characters, it's a lot of thematic reasons for what goes into names. So it might be looking up a name that may mean water or hope, or maybe the name is connected to the plot, or maybe it's connected to a theme or a visual aspect of the character, or even the genre it's written in. How we name, say, thriller characters versus how you name a fantasy character or a sci-fi character is different because of all the inner workings of it. I know for one of our, I'm kind of pivoting, but one of our authors in our publishing company, she's writing a thriller, and a lot of her inspiration comes from African and Black American witchcraft and lore and traditions and things of that. So a lot of the names also reflect in that too. And also, I think, oh yeah, Caribbean too. So a lot of that spirituality and the names that she uses also reflect in that as well. It's usually we're always looking for a theme. We're always looking. We're fantasy authors, especially. We love a theme. Oh my goodness! So usually names have a theme or a hidden meaning behind them that, again, most people won't care to look up or check, but we are the ones
But
that do. So we know. Like I'm like, oh, you found it. Like one person out of the 100 who read the book, they got it. So that was worth it.
Well, let me recommend for a future book, Amii, which means friend. But then
Yes.
everybody will read it as Amy, so it won't play in the books. So I actually asked a couple of people how they would pronounce different names in the book. Speaking of names that wouldn't play or you may not read right, so I'm going to play what they thought it was, and then you tell us how it's actually pronounced. And I think most of them were probably pretty close, or they were at least close to what I guessed. So We'll start with,
Roderick.
Roderick.
Roderick. Roderick.
is it Roderick?
Yes,
Okay.
Roderick.
Roderick. All right. And then we have
Riva.
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 they went two ways with that. We had some
Yeah,
Rivas and some Rivas.
Yeah, so it's Riva. At least I pronounce it Riva. Yeah. Yes, right in. Yes.
Okay, then got little sister.
Rana.
Rona.
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 Is it Rona or Rana?
Yep. It's
Rona.
Rona. Yep.
Okay, and I think the hardest one out of all of it.
That's who I'm waiting for.
Arcelia.
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 Arcilia.
And I'll tell you, I went back and forth with her name. So I feel like more often than not, I called her Arcelia, but periodically she was Aracelia to me with a in there. Aracelia.
Yeah.
So is it Arcelia?
Yes,
Okay.
Arcelia. Yes. Arcelia for short.
Or Celia for short. Okay. Then that was just one of those things. So fantasy books specifically, and I know you said that tends to be genre driven, which I read a lot of books, and I'd say that's probably a fair assessment. But you've got worlds that are totally made up and countries that are totally made up. So in this one,
Yes.
they speak other languages, but they seem kind of. So are they completely made up languages, or are they Spanish or Portuguese adjacent, or?
Yeah. So they're adjacent to World War languages we have here with just my own vernacular and twist to them. So they probably wouldn't make sense to an actual speaker. They'd be like, that's not correct. I'm like, no, it is just not here. And the reason for that is because in this world, it's supposed to be there's of course many Earths, and this is kind of the main first one. So it's the languages that we speak here is pulled from that world. So that's the proper quote unquote way to actually speak. But yeah, so I saved myself grace to. I was like, I created enough. Let me not create 5 new languages.
That's got to be difficult if you're using a completely made up language to be sure that you're using the same way all the way throughout something.
Yes.
If in book 1 you say that this word means love, and then in book 4 you're like, oh, it means umbrella, then, I don't know if people pay that much attention, but
trust me, people certainly do, and I'm definitely one of them. I'm a fickler for plot holes. I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't happen, but I know I'm just prefacing this now because there is a few more books in the future for a different series that are coming where I just shoot myself in the foot because I am making up 2 different languages. And
so you've got to have like composition books of what means what, your dictionaries. You've got your own dictionaries. I've got.
Yeah, it's both a physical and verbal language. So it's I'm shooting myself in the foot now. I'm just telling myself it's I have the basis like alphabet. That's not an alphabet because it doesn't use all 26 letters. But like that
sounds like so much fun. Is it fun?
Yes.
Or is it tedious, or is it fun?
It's fun when I have time.
So can you sleep, or do you lay down at night and you're like, oh, and this needs to happen?
Yes, it really much like that because, of course, with every language, it has like a whole thing of a language is that it follows a certain set of rules that, of course, have their own contradictions and exceptions with, of course, vernaculars, different vernaculars, regions, and things of that nature. So when making these ones, I had to make up its own language rules. And with that came with, okay, what words or letters aren't used? So then it's now remaking words in place of that or restructuring the sentence. So example, the letter Y it doesn't exist. So the word you doesn't like a secondary you or out like that whole system of, you do this or you are a friend or you doesn't exist in this language. So it's either first person or third person. There really isn't a secondary. It's either I or there, that person.
Wow.
So again, doing that is fun. And so again, I have to follow those rules. So when I'm writing, I have to be like, okay, this character is the one speaking. They can't use you. They have to, use another word, which, in terms for other people who don't speak the language, it sounds rude when you're going, there, woman, come. It's like you hear, like they don't use you. They don't have that. So
Right.
it builds all this other, it just starts building upon itself. Yeah, and again, that's just one rule. I made like 10 preliminary, shot myself in the foot with that, but it was fun, like getting to be like, oh, I can do this. I've done everything else, I might as well do a language this time.
Oh, that sounds like fun. It sounds terrifying. Like, I think
Yeah.
getting down into it, it sounds scary. But like at the first, that nugget of it when the idea is being birthed and you're like, yes, this is what I want to do. And then you get down in the trenches and you're like, what have I done?
Yeah. I realized that when I was like, yeah, why isn't it going to exist? And I'm like, okay, then the word you makes no sense. It doesn't. I'm like, could do ooh, and I'm like, oh. I'm like, okay, how do I? I'm like, I'm gonna have to restructure that so make this make sense.
So is it a singular process you're world building, or do you have people that you go to, consultants almost, even if they're just friends or your family or whatever? Like, is it a private process when you're working on it, or is it a, hey, this is what I'm thinking, what are your thoughts type deal?
I think the foundation is private, and then whenever I get a roadblock for trying to make sense of something is when I do outsource. So I may talk to my PA or my brother, who also is a big reader, well, graphic novel and comic book, but still they have even more convoluted rules
Right.
than anything I've ever written. So it's a lot of like, okay, example, the you, like, okay, they don't use the word you or the letter Y. How do I still integrate this language? So yeah, a lot of it does kind of start off with, again, me just, again, I'm going grazing. Then I start gathering everything and laying out the systems and how things work. And then I pinpoint, okay, I don't know how to make sense of this. So should I keep it or should I drop it or make a way to make it work? So that's usually when I do kind of stem out from just my hobbit hole to go and ask others for their advice and what ideas they might have too.
Is that scary as an artist to go out there and kind of put yourself out there before it's you've read it 17 times and you've drafted it and everything about it looks perfect and you're ready to go while it's still fledgling? Is that a scary process to go out there and put even a little bit of it out?
I think for me it isn't, because like I said, I talk to my PA almost every day. I'm like, hey girlie, I have a new idea. She's like, oh, okay, let's add it to the list. But I know for some people it can be a lot more daunting because there's that fear that someone may take your idea and run with it too. And um, you know, plagiarism is still very sadly a big thing, especially in literature. So there's always that fear, but I would always say look at the positives. Make sure if you're asking questions, make sure it's a community that you're a part of, you're active in, and you trust with your words, and you know that they're not going to, again, one, be harmful. So that's a dumb idea. You should stop writing. Like, whoa, okay. I just wanted to
Pump the
know how to
brakes there.
use exactly. So I would say always, just a little advice for like writers who may be stuck or who want to like ask for other help, just put it out there in a community that, it could be friends, it could be family, it could be a Facebook group that you've been a part of for years. Just seeing like what ideas you get from them, or just asking like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this, like what would you do in this situation? Or if you had a language that didn't use a certain letter, how would you make sure sentence structure still works? So you can also do it like that, so you don't feel like you're giving away your ideas or you're giving away your world building, but you're still getting the information you need Again, if you're not feeling too comfortable, we all authors, our books are our babies, so we try to take, we're very guarded for them and try to take the best care of them. It sometimes can be a little daunting. So if you're not feeling up for that, I would always say just ask a friend. Just another voice can really help you open up the possibilities of more ideas too.
Right. Yeah. And what about like constructive feedback? Is it one of those things that, like, yes, you want to get it because you want to hear it, but at the same time, you're like, don't say my baby's ugly?
It's kind of both. I think it's needed, but take it with grace and take it with time. I know for my first book, when I was writing, I had no clue what I was doing. And I would get some reviews. I'm like, how dare they? But I said, you know what? Let me take it like I do a grade from a professor. You know, they're trying to help me get better. You can clearly tell when someone is just being hurtful or being mean. It's very obvious when that's
Right.
happening, especially when they're like, this book was terrible, and you're like, yeah, okay, this is not trying to be constructive at all. Versus someone saying, oh well, the world building was too much. So again, I don't really think I've done that one as an example. It's kind of, just if you're like, you get that, that hurt feeling or that pride, like, hey, my book is perfect. Why would you say that? I would just say, give a day, come back to it, read it with fresh eyes when you've calmed down, when you've been able to digest it, when you've got some more food in your belly, and, then really read, okay, what about this, like, what about the review or the critique? Are they really trying to tell me, okay, the world building's too much? Reread over your work. Maybe you did put a little too much detail. Maybe especially as fantasy writers, we love world building. Sometimes we do overwrite it in the actual story where it drags and it loses a reader. So I would say, just looking at that, because criticism is just, like I said, for professors, they're just trying to help you. They're not out there to make sure you fail and you don't graduate, or a teacher's not here to make sure you fail and graduate. Like, they're giving constructive criticism because they believe in your work and they know you can do better. And think of readers as the same thing. Like, they believe it, they took time to write or reach out to you or critique because they know you have potential and they want to see you right to that potential, if not greater than that. So think of it like that, and you again, it won't feel as bad when you are rereading it or again trying to improve your writing, because you should be taking in criticism, because that's how you become a better writer. I know I definitely have become a better writer, and I see it in the reviews and I see it in the readers and their feedback. So I'm always grateful for it and excited to hear what they gotta say.
Do you reread your books? So, like, have you ever gone back through and kind of read them sequentially or anything? Like, I've only read the first one, but a lot of times with people who get into fantasy, especially if they're coming into one late, then they're going to binge read everything in that series, and so then they've got this whole continuous line. Like, there's no, I read the first
Yeah.
one 6 years ago, and then I read this one, and do you ever experience it in that same way when it's your own writing, or you just literally have your memory of what you wrote?
Yeah, I kind of do both. I do have a good memory, but I am, like I said, I'm a stickler for plot points and plot holes. But I definitely do have my own personal copies where I've marked out, like, hey, this is world building that you want to go back to and things like that. And I also have to prepare myself, because every writer, once we write and then we publish and then to reread everything, we're like, oh, I gotta read my words. Ew. Gross. And especially when you've had a series and you've improved or if you've written differently, you're like, this. And then sometimes you read and you're like, I wrote that. That's a gem.
You're like, yeah.
Yeah, let me pat myself on the shoulder for that. I know I definitely did that with the fifth book. It's like, oh, I was like, wow. The fifth book and the third book were the ones I was like, oh. Of course, book one was I feel it's the world building and just how the setup is so nice. So I pat myself on the back for that. But yeah, definitely I write or reread over my work, but I also have I am notoriously known for having PowerPoints for my world building. So I have each book has its own PowerPoint. And then I have an overarching PowerPoint for the whole series and its world building, which is over 100 slides and counting. And
Wow.
yeah, I get serious with my like again, like I said, I one thing that is my biggest pet peeve is when world building isn't consistent, because I am one of those people where I will read a book, and then if it's a series, I'm like, yeah, I'll buy all 5. And if I'm like, on page 59, you said that this plant was poisonous. But in book 2, on page 38, the plant isn't poisonous anymore. Like
What has happened here?
Exactly. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm taken out of the fantasy. I can't. But again, that's not for everyone. That's just me. But I
think that's really so. For my listeners who haven't read it, and I'm actually going to be doing a giveaway of an e-copy of this book for somebody who listens to this episode. But so at the very beginning of it, there is this whole section where you're, the hello reader part. And
yes.
you literally go through and you kind of tell us what this world is. Like, you lay it out into who these people are and who the players are. And some of them we don't even really talk about in this one, but we know that they're out there. And so, like, you talk about the gods, you talk about the people of Earth, you talk about the acolytes. And then all the way at the back here, there's like an appendix. And it has got a map of where these countries are. And my goodness, like, it tells you the names of the countries, and they've got a little number on the map that I just showed on the previous page. And then you've got the countries of the world with like the articulation of all of them. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how much I nerded out over this. It's like, I feel like it gives you a glimpse into kind of what that process. And so the fact that you said you've got PowerPoints on PowerPoints does not surprise me. I mean, when you've got that level of detail into the building of it. So,
And it's just my favorite part. And again, like I said, as a fantasy writer, I know for other fantasy writers and books I've read, we love our world building, but sometimes we add it to the actual story, and it bogs it down, and sometimes that it loses readers. I know I've read books where I'm like, 2 chapters could have been taken out and nothing would have really changed. It was just world building. So
yeah.
my way of combating that was adding that world building to the backs and the fronts of the book, so I can still have my, I have it, it's in there. But again, not taking people out of the story, because it would have been a lot to have a character. Okay, well, I'm Roderick. I'm the acolyte of time. Let me tell you about the other 3 acolytes and what their gods do. And it's like, you have to think of it that these people are living in this world. They would know their 4 gods. They wouldn't need another person to tell them about that. It's kind of like, you live in the US, you would know who the president is. You wouldn't need someone to be like, okay, let me sit you down and tell you who the president is, what are the 3 branches of government, what state you live in. You don't know that. It's okay, I got you. What city, like, you would notice. So
Well, and I think that's one of the things that you notice in some books, where the author is obviously trying to give you backstory, and you're like, this does not feel like a conversation this brother and sister would be having about how they do this. We do this every week on Wednesday. Remember, brother? Like, and you're like,
yeah, yes, because I want it to feel natural. I don't go out and, I live in South Carolina. I don't go to my friends and go, oh, I'm going to the capital city of Columbia, which is in South Carolina, where the mayor who lives in this city or lives in this building, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, I just say, oh, I'm going up to Columbia for 2 hours or so, or I'm going, you want it to feel natural, and or at least I like to have it feel natural, because when it's just like when you're watching a movie, you can tell when people are just, that exposition dumps. It's the same thing. Like they didn't find a fun or creative way to really integrate it into the story, so they just have to have one character play them like, well, what is the capital of South Carolina? And how far is it from Charleston, South Carolina? And it's like, well, character number 2. And then they give a full 2-minute explanation. And it's like, dude, you would, if you've lived here for 20 years, you would know the capital of the state. Like, it's
Right.
not something, So again, that's why I really wanted to make sure like readers still had that information for those who may be like, oh, I want to know more about this, or what is this about? But again, not adding it to the story where it felt like it was being bogged down or it made no sense. I wanted like world building in the actual story to make sense.
Sure.
Roderick is half dragon, half human. Of course, he wouldn't know too much about Umbrian lore, as Arcelia is an Umbrian who can create shadows. So of course he would ask questions, but he wouldn't ask her questions about, again, the gods because everyone knows them. Or she wouldn't ask about the gods because everybody knows them. That's just a universal knowledge in this world. So, I try to make sure the things that needed explanation without, again, feeling like we're in a history lesson were put there, but not in a way where it kind of takes you out where you're like, boy, here we go.
Well, I really enjoyed that way of doing it. And I think one of the things that's so you mentioned multiple acolytes and multiple gods in it, and they're not even in this one. So like in your head, do you already kind of have the other, like when you wrote this, did you already know what you were going to do for book 2? And I know you said you were originally thinking like a duology, and that's not where that ended up. Did you have ideas about what you were going to do with these people, or were there chances that they were just here and you were never going to talk about them again?
Oh, no, definitely what happened was when I had Rod, like the characters in book 1 were the characters that were going to be in Child of Tempest. But I had Roderick as always as the acolyte of time, and I was like, well, I see 4 gods, and I wrote that and I put that in the world building. And when I was writing the book and I got to the end, I was like, okay, but I didn't even mention all the other stuff I added. I was like, well, okay, I'll have a second book to continue that. And then I wrote it, and the characters are like, hey, girly, the story's not done yet. You know that, right? You still got like 2 other acolytes and 3 other like nations we haven't visited. And like, hey, what about that thing that happened in book 1? I'm like, okay. So then, yeah, we're now 5 books in, but it definitely, when I started book 1, I had, again, this vast world already pre-built. And once I finished the first book, I was like, I either have to make this the length of a Game of Thrones novel or a Lord of the Rings novel, which I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put no one through that.
Yeah.
So I decided I will make it into a series where I can still, continue. Because I was excited about writing these characters in this lore. And, it just didn't make sense to add it all into this one book. Because, again, I would have to either have made it gigantic and keep dragging out the one singular story of Roderick and his father writing, which would have, again, it just would have been tired. Everyone would have been tired. I would have been tired writing it. So I decided,
no one could hold the book up.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I would have had to like, here are my 800 pages of Child of Tempest, to just add in everything. And I decided, you know what, we're gonna, do cake slices and give everybody their own cake slice.
So that actually leads into Cheyenne again. Actually, had a question that was, do editors always want multiple books? It seems like all fantasy novels end up being at least 3 books, if not more. Is that up to the writer or to the publisher?
It kind of depends. It's, for some people, it is up to the writer. And in the world of publication, it's always, people always want more books. Publishers always want more, if they can, again, they're trying to make money. If they can get more books from you, they'll get more books from you. So sometimes it is out of the, writer's hands. And it's more of the publisher going, hey, we need another book, or hey, you're contracted for 3 books, and the writer's like, well, I kind of ended everything in the second book. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And sometimes you can't tell when a book is just like, hey, I need to make this. I needed. They said 3 books. I had to get something out there, and then sometimes it's more fluid where you don't know how many books you're going to write until you finish it. Like I said, I finished book 1 and I was like, oh no, I definitely need a second book. And I thought, okay, at the end of second book, at end of Descendants of Time and Death, it's going to be done. I can close this chapter. But I was like, again, all this world building and what I set up in the second book, me and my character and loving character flaws and issues and character arcs. I was like, it needs more. So I was like, okay, let's be honest. We're not going to finish this in 3 books. I was like, how this is going, a third book is not going to cut it. So I had to sit down and say, okay, let's see how many books I would really need. But, you know, you have some people who, again, they've taken their years and time to already pre-write all of that, those series and those books in the series where they're like, okay, here you go, editor, I have everything. And then you have some people like me who are like, hey, I actually am going to add another book. And then you have other people where when they kind of do finish the series, fans and readers go, hey, can we get one, like, can we get a
Just one
sequel
more?
or a prequel somewhere? And I've already gotten that question. I'm like, you guys.
You're like, no, I'm going to give you something brand new. Come on.
Yes. I'm like, there.
So how long does it, I know you, hold on, I'm going to move this mic real quick. Sorry, I keep kicking it. All right. So when did this one release? When did Child of Tempest release?
2019.
Okay, and it is 2024, and you are 5 books in. So this is like a yearly thing for you then.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how. Again, I don't know how I'm doing that with everything else I'm doing, but I do chalk it up to being just uber creative. So I just, you know, when the longest part for me is the world building and structure because I'm so meticulous with it, because I want to make even things that won't show up until the 5th book. Like there are some parts of this book or the world building that don't really show up until the 5th book or even the 6th book. Or again, are callbacks to the 1st book. So it's like you got 4 books in between these.
Yeah.
But I like to make sure it's very meticulous so that when I'm writing, I'm just going and I can, you know, I can type as fast as I talk. So
it's not that you're a vampire and not sleeping or anything.
No, it's really, you know, in an hour I can knock out maybe a chapter or 2. And if you know, calculate if there's say 20 to 30 chapters, that's 20 to 30 hours. And if you spread that over 3 months, you know, you're not, it's a full book. But again, it's because I took about 2 to 3.5 years of just creating the fantasy world for Child of Tempest and the God Scion series. So I could just easily, you know, write and, you know, focus on the characters and then, you know, go back to those PowerPoints and go, okay, I can take this from here and finally add it here. Or, okay, we are finally going to this island. Or, hey, we're finally going to this country. You know, it's mentioned in the map and then you don't see it until book 4. And, you know, or it's one sentence like, hey, do you remember that one sentence I said on page 130? Book 5.
Coming back to it.
It'll make sense now. We're coming back. This whole book is revolved around that one paragraph.
So Jenny from West Columbia wondered, would you want to live in the world that you've created? Like, is it a place you'd want to visit? Or is it a place you'd want to live? Is it?
I can definitely see myself visiting it, though I would be very particular on what countries I would be visiting. Like I'm definitely not going to die out. Oh no, Roderick and his family can keep it. They can keep that whole country to themselves. Nope. I definitely think I would go to one of the, there's one of the, I think, nations where it's like floating islands. So they have like water underneath it that creates waterfalls and they float in there. I would go there. I think it's the Chaparrals.
That sounds pretty.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm going there to vacation. We going there. But there's another one where, and this is where book 4 takes place. So it's not a spoiler. It's just setting, but it's an underground city. So it's, the whole kingdom, like capital kingdom, is underground, and it's just chalked with crystals and dragons and dragon harpy hybrids. And I would go there too, but again, until Roderick and crew show up, I'd be like, you know what, because y'all
See ya.
y'all come with trouble. Yeah, and we're underground, so I'm a little scared of what trouble you're coming with.
Oh, that's funny. So, and I've kept you for a little while here, so I'll start rounding us up here. But I did tell Cheryl that I would ask. So Cheryl from Columbia doesn't read a lot of fantasy, but does love to read, and wondered if you pull inspiration from other authors or other genres in your writing, or is it one of those things where once you start doing fantasy, so you are several novels into a fantasy, like, is that it? Like, can it only be fantasy for you, or do you still pull in? I know you said you work with other people who do thrillers and things like that, but does any of that come into it?
Definitely, I think you have to do that, especially for me. There, or not just me, but most of the publishing industry, we kind of categorize books into either plot driven or character driven. And I definitely tend to lean more towards character driven stories and plots. And with that, you're writing about people, you're writing about dynamics. And there is no way, in this one lifetime that I have lived all of these lives and lived all of these, I don't think I would probably need a lot of therapy. I don't think I would be writing about it the way I am if I did look through all of these traumas back to, oh my goodness, no. That would not be safe. But
For anybody.
for anybody, oh my, yeah, no. So you definitely have to pull inspiration from other genres. I know I read a lot about, I read a lot of memoirs, and I read a lot of poetry as well, and that's where I pull a lot for character building, because you are getting to see these stories and these people's stories and these people who've lived through this pain and how they dealt with it. And then you can now take that and say, okay, how do I have this? It feels now realistic to write about it for this character. Again, not to spoil anything, there are characters who do, deal with addictions. And I personally
Right.
have not dealt with any addictions. But if I'm going to write about a character who is, I would want it to feel authentic and honest, because again, I don't want it to feel like I'm just creating caricatures of
Right.
people who have been through these real life situations. I want people to connect to my characters, and not see them as caricatures. I want them to feel like humans who, they have honest and real reactions to things, and they hold grudges and they get mad, and they don't let things go or love and forgive and kumbaya at the end of the story, and it's all rainbows and the end. Like, no, like, people are still mad. People are
Right.
mad 20 years later, and they are not letting it go, and they should, but they don't. And in some cases they shouldn't ever let it go, because ugh.
Well, and that's what makes a good book, though, right? You don't want that in your life, but you do want that in what you're reading.
Yes. So it's, again, I think to really, harness like different genres, and reading in genres outside of just fantasy helps you become a better writer, because you are getting to get inspired and read and reflect, and maybe it's how the person writes or what they write about or how they're writing, that then you can connect it and add it to your own story. Like I said, a lot of fantasy sometimes can be more plot driven than character driven. And, so there is that emphasis on the world building and the plot and the overarching theme. But when you have character driven stories, again, you're spending a lot of time with these characters and their emotions and how that impacts the plot and their choices and how that moves the plot. So, if like I said, most fantasy stories are more plot driven, then, and I'm writing character driven stories, I'm going to have to look outside and see what other stories there are out there to better create and craft this story for it to feel real and connect to the readers. And but yeah, I definitely think, I can't say all writers do it, but I definitely think writers should read outside their genre to get inspired and, again, better your writing overall too.
So, what are you reading right now? Like, what are you personally reading right now?
What I'm personally reading, well, right now, a lot of manuscripts. Right now, I just picked up, or I just finished. It was I think Apprentice to the Villain. I just finished that. I'm reading another book called, I think it's Lore, if I'm not mistaken. And then I'm reading a book on Japanese mythology and Chinese mythology. And then I'm finishing, again, I have a lot of, so all of these books are just literally, I'm like, okay, this is good. Next book. I'm definitely a book hopper. So again, some of these books I've been reading for months.
Sure.
But yeah, I think right now it's a mix of a lot of memoirs and a bit of fantasy and a lot of mythology, because again, I'm back on the I'm back on the world building train, since the God's Scion is coming to an end soon, and I've already got new ideas and languages
I
I
bet
got
that
to
part's
create.
hard. Like you want to finish and you want to do right by God Scion, but you already have the new ideas and they're shiny and fresh. Like I imagine that part's pretty difficult.
Yes, and how I combat that is, what I do is I kind of allot time to be like, okay, we're going to work on the fun, shiny new project. And then next week, we're going to finish chapter 3. So I give myself space to, kind of bounce off my own ideas, and then also be like, oh, yeah, I get to play the new shiny book or new shiny whip. And then let's go back to the one you actually have to finish, that people are waiting for you to finish, because because you said you're going to finish it, and it needs to be done. So
You're
then
like,
you can
Winnie's a big
focus
fat
all
liar.
your time. Yes, I have some people who every convention they'll go to and they see me, they're like, I'm waiting for the next book. I'll be back. And I'm like, okay. Like sweat dripping down my face. I'm like, okay. Definitely, yeah, there are definitely a few people who are waiting for book 6. So of course, I want to finish it. And I'm with it too, because it is the end of this my era, my God Scion era. I am excited for it too, because it's now going to tie up everyone's loose ends, which is, this is a lot. This is going to be a doozy. Yeah, I say
Forward to reading the
book
rest of
one.
them.
No, book 1 is definitely like the start of the roller coaster, and once you get to book 2, it's just a full on drop, and everyone is still dropping. There's been no twist it's just been more drops, maybe a little bump, and then keep dropping, and we're still descending.
Wow.
And then you get to book 6 and the roller coaster's over. So it's literally just all of this up, book 1, book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So who is your favorite author? Like the
It
one
would
that's
have
dearest to your heart? What's that?
I I think it would. I love Olivia Butler and I love Lois Lowry. They ironically both rate more sci-fi than fantasy. Oh, I said Olivia. It's Octavia. Oh my goodness, it's Octavia or Olivia. I'm so bad with names.
Understand, me too.
I'm like, wait a second, is it Olivia or this is gonna bother me? I'm trying to Olivia
Octavia.
Butler. Octavia.
Yeah,
Okay, I knew
Octavia.
I was like, Olivia is wrong. It's Octavia Butler. See,
Octavia.
I, I was like,
You're like, but
and
don't
then
worry, I
it's
love it.
Lois.
It's fine.
Yes, but I can see her face. But names, that's why I'm surprised I even keep up with so many R names in the God Scion series, because names are not my
You're like, but it's okay. I
forte.
have a PowerPoint slide for them. I just refer back.
Yes, yes, I need to do that for all my favorite authors. But Octavia and Miss Lois Lowry, they are so. I just love how they wrote their sci-fi and their stories and their plot twist. And again, I felt like I was in those worlds. I didn't feel like I was getting expo dumped to the point where I'm like, okay, now I'm back in real life.
Right.
It felt like I was with the character, and or you're that nosy neighbor and you're like, what is going on that house? So they are definitely like my top favorites. And also, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget, I think it's Melissa Meyer. I'm probably saying her name wrong too. I apologize.
No, you're good.
I just, again, she's a fantasy author, and I love how her writing structure is so, it's so fun. And yeah, so it's definitely, I feel like reading those stories, especially growing up, I think that's what really encouraged me and helped me visualize my stories, because I I want the reader to feel like they're like, think of themselves as this ghost who's literally like holding the hand of the character or the main character, and are just watching their world play out around them, and are just like looking at them like, dude, this is crazy. But I that's how I because that's how I felt when I was reading these books. I felt like I was there reading or inside the stories, just on, like, was it the fly on the shoulder, or or fly on the wall, and
Right.
I'm just watching and observing all the craziness go down. And and that's what I wanted to feel when I was writing and creating characters. I wanted the reader to feel like they're this ghost, or they're this fly on the wall who's watching these events play out with this character as they move through the story.
I think you do a good job of it. I really enjoyed it. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to read the rest in the series. I just finished this one up, I think, last week. 'Cause, yeah, we were supposed to talk originally last week, so I finished it up before you and I were supposed to talk. But I don't know if I have any. Like, I've got a ton of questions. I have an unbelievable amount of questions, but maybe not for this episode. Like, I know that we've talked about the fact that you're in the publishing, and then you've got the literary lounge and all of that, and I really would love to know more about it. But I did want to focus this episode just on that creative process and that world building, and I think that I know people are going to be excited to listen to this. So I am so thankful that you joined me today. And is there anything that you want to say to our listeners, or anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
I just want to say again, thanks for your amazing questions. If you can't tell, I am a lover of world building. I mean, the W in Winnie stands for world building. So I love world building. I love talking about it. And if you guys ever have any questions about my world building or the stories, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I love talking about it. And I always get excited to hear like what characters people love or what characters people are pissed off at, which is usually what I get more than often.
You're like, this guy.
Oh yeah, I've had some people say like, yeah, they got to be thrown off a cliff. I'm like, my bad. And they're like, yeah, they gotta go. They're not showing up in the books again, right? I'm like, well,
About that.
about that, they're kind of pivotal points to like the next two books, but there's
It's
only
all
two
going to
more
be
books in this.
okay.
Well, the
Okay, it's
question I
not going to
get
be
the most
okay.
is, yeah, that's very much is like, is this a happy ending? I'm like, it's a contempt ending. And they're like,
It
Winnie, that's
ends.
not a. It ends. They're like, that's not an answer. I'm like, it is an answer. There's an answer I can give you. It's like I neither not confirm or deny anything. Books, the series will end. Whether it is good or bad, we'll have to see.
Can't even imagine. Like, it's going to be an end. Unless it's
It's going
not.
to be
Maybe
end.
there's a book 7. Who
Yes.
knows?
Oh goodness. If there's a book 7, it probably would just be a big book of the world building. Because I have been asked that too. Like some people want like a full book, like book Bible of the world building series or the
It's
world building
very
in the
neat.
series. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I mean, you
So
you do
I
that really well, so I can see that.
Yes, and I have, I'm an artist, so I have sketches and drawings of so many different things of the series, and again, you get to see just little glimpses of that in the book. So it's definitely something. I was like, I don't know if I can do that, and then I looked at my 100-page plus PowerPoint. I'm like, okay, okay, I definitely have enough to make a book on this. So I was like, I don't know information, and then I'm like, well, I think I might have
Turns
too
out I
much
do.
information.
Volume 1 and volume 2. We're good.
Yeah, yeah, it might have to be either that one, either it's going to be a split or it's going to be a Lord of the Rings book you just
We
heave
have to register
around.
it as a weapon.
Yes, Oh my goodness. Yeah. Honestly, yeah. It's like, yeah, this is my weapon, my book of God Scion series world building. It is 900 pages.
There you
It
go.
has, here you go. You guys are welcome.
Well, again, my Wonderlings, we had Miss Winnie with us today. Tataw. Winnie, Winifred Tataw. Yes, yes. And she is a multi-talented woman and young, so talented, so many things, and she's so very young. For the listeners who are listening to this and not watching it, just trust me on this one. But it has been such a pleasure and a privilege to have you today. And thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly insane schedule to talk to us here at Welcome to Wonderland. We appreciate it.
Wonderland. It was great.